Okay, grade 3. So when we left Despereaux last, he had just been taken to the dungeon. He had just been found guilty of his crimes and was being led to the dungeon by none other than his brother. So chapter 14 is called Darkness. Despereaux lay on his back at the bottom of the steps and touched the bones in his body one by one. They were all there. And amazingly, they were unbroken. He got to his feet and became aware of a terrible, foul, extremely insulting smell. The dungeon, dear reader, stank. It stank of despair and suffering and hopelessness, which is to say that the dungeon smelled of rats. And it was so dark. Despereaux had never encountered darkness like that before. It was awful and all-encompassing. The darkness had a physical presence as if it were a being all its own. The mouse held up one small paw in front of his whiskers. He could not see it, and he had the truly alarming thought that perhaps he, Despereaux Tilling, did not even exist. "Oh my," he said out loud. His voice echoed in the smelly darkness. "Perfidy," said Despereaux, just to hear his voice again and to assure himself that he did exist. "P," said Despereaux, and the name of his beloved was immediately swallowed up by the darkness. He shivered, he shook, he sneezed, his teeth chattered. He longed for his handkerchief. He grabbed hold of his tail. It took him a long, frightening moment to even locate his tail in such absolute darkness. Just to have something to hold on to, anything to hold on to. He considered fainting. He deemed it the only reasonable response to the situation in which he found himself, but then he remembered the words of the Threadmaster: honor, courtesy, devotion, and bravery. "I will be brave," thought Despereaux. "I will try to be brave like a knight in shining armor. I will be brave for Princess P." How best for him to be brave? He cleared his throat. He let go of his tail. He stood up straighter. "Once upon a time," he said out loud in the darkness. Once he said these words, because they were the best and the most powerful words that he knew, just saying them comforted him. "Once upon a time," he said again, feeling a tiny bit braver. "There was a knight, and he wore always an armor of shining silver." "Once upon a time," boomed a voice from the darkness, "a knight in shining armor? What does a mouse know of such things?" That voice, that loudest voice that Despereaux had ever heard, could only, he assumed, belong to the world's largest rat. Despereaux's small, overworked heart stopped beating, and for the second time that day, the mouse fainted. Chapter 15, Light. When Despereaux awoke, he was cupped in the large calloused hand of a human, and he was staring into the fire of one match, and beyond the match there was a large dark eye looking directly at him. "A mouse with a red thread," boomed the voice. "Oh yes, Gregory knows the way of mice and rats. Gregory knows, and Gregory has had his own thread marking him. See here, mouse?" And the match that was held to the candle and the candle that sputtered to life led Despereaux to see that there was a rope tied around the man's ankle. "Here is the difference between us. Gregory's rope saves him, and your thread will be the death of you." The man blew the candle out, and the darkness descended, and the man's hand closed tightly around Despereaux, and Despereaux felt his beleaguered heart start up a crazy rhythm of fear. "Who are you?" he whispered. "The question is that, mouse, is Gregory. You are talking to Gregory, the jailer, who has been buried here keeping watch over the dungeon for decades, for centuries, for eons, for eternities. You are talking to Gregory, the jailer, who, in the richest of ironies, is nothing but a prisoner here himself." "Oh," said Despereaux. Can I get down, Gregory?" "The mouse wants to know if Gregory the jailer will let him go. Listen to Gregory, mouse. You do not want to be let go. Here in the dungeon, you are in the treacherous dark heart of the world. And if Gregory was to release you, the twistings and turnings and dead ends and false doorways of this place would swallow you for all eternity. Only Gregory and the rats can find their way through this maze. The rats, because they know the way of its mirrors, and they know the way because it mirrors their own dark hearts. And Gregory, because the rope is forever tied to his ankle to guide him back to the beginning. Gregory would let you go, but you would only beg him to take you up again. The rats are coming for you, you see. They are? Listen, said Gregory. You can hear their tails dragging through the muck and the filth. You can hear them filing their nails in their teeth. They're coming for you. They're going to come take you apart, piece by piece. Despereaux listened, and he was quite certain that he heard the nails in the teeth of the rats and the sound of sharp things being made sharper still. They will strip all the fur from you and all the flesh from your bones, and when they are done with you, there will be nothing left except for red thread. Red thread and bones. Gregory has seen it many times, the tragic end of a mouse. But I need to live, said Despereaux. I can't die. You cannot die. Oh, that is lovely. He says he cannot die. Gregory closed his hand more tightly around Despereaux. And why would that be, Mouse? Why is it that you cannot die? Because I'm in love. I love somebody, and it's my duty to serve her. Love, said Gregory. Love. I will show you the twisted results of love. Another match was struck. The candle was lit again, and Gregory held it up so that the flame illuminated a massive, towering, teetering pile of spoons and kettles and soup bowls. Look on that, Mouse, said Gregory. That is a monument to the foolishness of love. What is that? Said Despereaux. He stared at the great tower that reached up and up and up into the blackness. What it looks like. Spoons, bowls, kettles, all of them gathered here as hard evidence of the pain of loving a living thing. The king loved the queen, and the queen died. This monstrosity, this junk heap, is a result of love. I don't understand, said Despereaux. Ah, you will not understand until you lose what you love. But enough about love, said Gregory. He blew out the candle. We will talk about your life instead, and how Gregory will save it, if you so desire. Why would you save me? Despereaux asked. Have you saved any other mice? Never, said Gregory, not one. Why would you save me then? Because you, Mouse, can tell Gregory a story. Stories are like light. Light is precious in a world so dark. Begin at the beginning, tell Gregory a story, make some light. And because Despereaux wanted very much to live, he said, once upon a time. Yes, said Gregory happily. He raised his hand higher and higher, still until Despereaux's whiskers brushed against his leathery, time-worn ear. Go on, Mouse, said Gregory. Tell Gregory a story. And it was in this way that Despereaux became the only mouse sent to the dungeon whom the rats did not reduce to a pile of bones and a piece of red thread. It was in this way that Despereaux was saved. Reader, if you don't mind, that is where we will leave our small mouse for now, in the dark of the dungeon, in the hand of an old jailer, telling a story to save himself. It is time for us to turn our attention elsewhere. Time for us, reader, to speak of rats, and of one rat in particular. And that is the end of Book 1. Book 2 is called Chiaroscuro. Chiaroscuro is the book about rats. Chapter 16, Blinded by the Light. As our story continues, reader, we must go backward in time to the birth of a rat named Chiaroscuro and called Roscuro, a rat born into the filth and darkness of the dungeon several years before the mouse Despereaux was born upstairs in the light. Reader, do you know the definition of the word chiaroscuro? If you look in your dictionary, you will find that it means the arrangement of light and dark, darkness and light together. Rats do not care for light. Roscuro's parents were having a bit of fun when they named their son. Rats do have a sense of humor. Rats, in fact, think that life is very funny. And they are right, reader. They are right. In the case of Chiaroscuro, however, the joke had a hint of a prophecy to it, for it happened that when Roscuro was a very young rat, he came upon the great length of rope on the dungeon floor. "Ah, what have we here?" said Roscuro. Being a rat, he immediately began to nibble at the rope. "Stop that!" boomed a voice, and a great hand came out of the darkness and picked the rat up by his tail and held him suspended down. "Were you nibbling at Gregory's rope, rat?" "Who wants to know?" said Roscuro, for even upside down he was still a rat. "You smart alecky rat, you smart alecky rat, nibbling on Gregory's rope. Gregory will teach you a lesson with his rope." And keeping Roscuro upside down, Gregory lit a match with the nail of his thumb and then held the brilliant flame right to Roscuro's face. "Ah," said Roscuro. He didn't pull his head back away from the light, but alas, he did not close his eyes, and the flame exploded around him and danced inside him. "Has no one told you the rules?" said Gregory. "What rules?" "Gregory's rope, rat, is off limits." "So, apologize for chewing on Gregory's rope." "I will not," said Roscuro. "Apologize." "No." "Filthy rat," said Gregory. "You black-souled thing, Gregory has had it with you rats." He held the match closer to Roscuro's face, and a terrible smell of burnt whiskers rose up around the jailer and the rat. And then the match went out, and Gregory released Roscuro's tail. He flung him back into the darkness. "Don't ever touch Gregory's rope again, or you'll be sorry." Roscuro sat on the dungeon floor. The whiskers on the left side of his face were gone. His heart was beating hard, and though the light from the match had disappeared, it danced still before the rat's eyes, even when he closed them. "Light," he said aloud, and then he whispered the word again. "Light." From that moment forward, Roscuro showed an abnormal, inordinate interest in illumination of all sorts. He was always, in the darkness of the dungeon, on the lookout for light, the smallest glimmer, the tiniest shimmer. His rat soul longed inexplicably for it. He began to think that light was the only thing that gave life meaning, and he despaired that there was so little of it to be had. He finally voiced this sentiment to his friend, a very old one-eared rat named Botticelli Remorso. "I think," said Roscuro, "that the meaning of life is light." "Light," said Botticelli. "Ha! You kill me. Light has nothing to do with it." "What does it all mean then?" said Roscuro. "The meaning of life," said Botticelli, "is suffering, specifically the suffering of others. Prisoners, for instance. Reducing a prisoner to weeping and wailing and begging is a delightful way to invest your existence with meaning." As he spoke, Botticelli swung from one extraordinarily long nail on his right front paw a heart-shaped locket. He had taken the locket from a prisoner and hung it on a thin braided rope. When Botticelli spoke, the locket moved back and forth and back and forth. "Are you listening?" Botticelli said to Roscuro. "I'm listening." "Good," said Botticelli. "Do as I say, and your life will be full of meaning. This is how you torture a prisoner. First, you must convince him that you are his friend. Listen to him, encourage him to confess his sins, and when the time is right, talk to him. Tell him what he wants to hear. Tell him, for instance, that you will forgive him, that this is a wonderful joke to play on a prisoner, to promise forgiveness." "Why?" said Roscuro. His eyes went back and forth, following the locket. "Because," said Botticelli, "you will promise it." "Ha! You promise it, but you don't grant it. You gain his trust, and then you deny him. You refuse to offer the very thing he wants. Forgiveness, freedom, friendship, whatever it is that his heart most desires, you withhold it." And at this point in his lecture, Botticelli laughed so hard that he had to sit down and catch his breath. The locket swayed back and forth, and then stopped altogether. "Ha!" said Botticelli. "Ha! You gain his trust, you refuse him, and you become what he knew you were all along. What you knew you were all along, not a friend, not a confessor, not a forgiver, but a rat." Botticelli wiped his eyes and shook his head and sighed a sigh of great contentment. He set the locket in motion again. At that point, it is most effective to run back and forth over the prisoner's feet, inducing physical terror along with the emotional sort. Oh, he said, it is such a lovely game indeed, and it is just absolutely chock full of meaning. I would like very much to torture a prisoner, said Roscuro. I would love to make someone suffer. Your time will come, said Botticelli. Currently, all the prisoners are spoken for, but another prisoner will arrive sooner or later. How do I know this to be true? Because, Roscuro, thankfully, there is evil in the world, and the presence of evil guarantees the existence of prisoners. So soon there'll be a prisoner for me? Yes, said Botticelli Rimorso, yes. Oh, I'm so looking forward to it. Of course you're looking forward to it. You are looking forward to it because you are a rat, a real rat. Yes, said Roscuro, I am a real rat. Concerned not at all with light, said Botticelli. Concerned not at all with light, said Roscuro. Botticelli laughed again and shook his head. The locket suspended from the long nail of the paw swung back and forth and back and forth. You, my young friend, are a rat. Exactly. Yes. Evil, prisoners, rats, suffering. It all fits together so neatly, so sweetly. Oh, it is a lovely world, a lovely dark world indeed. And there, dear reader, is where we are going to finish for today. And I want you to think about how the rat's expectation of being a certain way, that if you were a rat, you can't be someone who likes light, the same way that Despereaux was a mouse and he was expected to act a certain way. And if you don't act that way, then what does that mean? And I will see you next time for chapter 17.